Welcome again. Welcome everyone to yet another episode of Coach by TripleDart. We have one fantastic session in store for the next 35 minutes. Where Anthony will take you through a bunch of very interesting perspective on homepage messaging. But before even we get started on that, you know one thing that we've been doing coach for the past 4 months, and this is our fourth episode. And we try to bring in practitioners of marketing who can help you improve your day-to-day marketing efforts, and how you can have plug and play frameworks on how do you improve your marketing in these talks particularly. As you all know, marketing has undergone a wave of change, in year on year, and and it is becoming imperative for marketers to stay in touch with the latest trends. With most of the product categories today becoming commoditized, your narrative, your messaging has become all the more important. Today morning, as I was brushing up for this episode, I came across an interesting LinkedIn post by Peirri, which talks about how do you create a category in the commoditized space. Simple example: if you're an e-commerce platform today, you are in the Shopify category. And if you're an email marketing tool, you're probably in the MailChimp category. And if it's a customer support software, you're either Zendesk or a Freshdesk category. The leader becomes the default. So your messaging needs to be really upfront about why someone should choose you over them. So this resonated with me. I thought I'll set the tone for this talk, by just quoting this, because this is exactly what Anthony will be covering in the next 30 to 35 minutes. Anthony, probably, if you're on LinkedIn and if you're someone who is following all the content that is getting floated around on LinkedIn, obviously you wouldn't have missed what Anthony is talking about on a, on his LinkedIn channel, as well as, plethora of YouTube videos that you come across. He's a seasoned PMM leader. He's a co-founder of Fletch PMM. He's worked with multiple brands across different stages of growth.
Mahesh, sorry to cut you. I think if you are changing the tab, we are still seeing the first one.
Yeah, I'm not changing the tab.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, So, it's just an introduction. So Anthony is a seasoned product marketing expert and a co-founder at Fletch PMM. He has worked with many early stage SaaS companies and has helped them position their products better, effectively communicate what value they offer, purely from a website marketing standpoint. Some of the brands that he has worked with include Synthesia, Lemlist, and a ton of other companies across all the growth stages. And I will pass it on to Anthony, to take you over the session for the next 30 odd minutes. Over to you, Anthony. Yeah.
Definitely. Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So, so essentially everything Mahesh said. I'm Anthony Peirri. I'm a co-founder of Fletch PMM. My partner's name is Robert Kaminsky. The two of us primarily focus on helping early stage companies with positioning and messaging, and then taking all of those strategic outputs and helping them rewrite their homepage. And so the vast majority of the companies we work with, maybe they've raised money or something, but some reason that they're like, we're struggling to write our homepage and we think you guys could help. And we post lots of stuff on LinkedIn about it. And that's kind of how, we all got connected. So before we get into the actual meat of the presentation, I just want to tell some key principles that kind of guide how we think about product marketing for B2B software companies, B2B technology companies. And some of these things feel like they're not controversial, but in reality, they kind of are. People really disagree with them. So the first one is this: founding principle of Fletch: more people will buy your product if they understand what it is. And so that seems like it should be extremely obvious, but then when you start looking at homepages of different companies, they end up looking something like this. This is an example from ServiceNow. Put yes to work, save or grow, satisfy shareholders, or satisfy customers. When facing tough choices, choose the one platform that lets you say yes to both. Make yes work is the CTA. So More people will buy your product if they understand what it is. This is obviously not helping them understand what the product is or why they would buy it or when they would use it or what it does or any of those foundational questions. So it shouldn't be a surprise that we think that this is not good according to our principles. Second principle, we think that clear messaging is better than clever messaging. It's more important for people to understand what you're trying to communicate than to be wowed by some sort of creative, cool, clever message that just sounds interesting but isn't necessarily very clear. And again, that should feel not controversial. But again, when you start looking at people's websites, you get stuff like this: software that keeps you running while you keep the world running, which is obviously very clever, not very clear, not really sure what this means. Or another one, making smart smarter, learn about our smarter solutions. This type of messaging is really very unclear. And so as much as we would think that it would be obvious, it seems like it's not so obvious that people think this. And then one of our most controversial opinions is that the people who read homepages of websites specifically, they actually are shopping for products, not outcomes. And there's kind of like a marketing dogma that everyone sort of just adopts. And it's that nobody cares about products, nobody cares about features. They just are buying outcomes. And outcomes, we're trying to increase our conversions by 10%. That's what we're trying to buy. But in reality, the people who care about those outcomes are usually several levels higher in the organization, and they've hired people to go buy products in order to achieve those outcomes. And the people who are buying the products, those are the ones who are going to land on your homepage. So it leaves you with this decision. Do I want to speak to the people who are actually looking for products, or do I want to speak to people who will never actually land on my homepage? And unfortunately, most of the marketers choose to write for the decision maker who's way, way up the chain, who actually is never going to see the homepage. And that's how we end up with copy that looks like this, right? The only AI platform purpose-built for outcomes. Spend your time where it truly matters, an outcome. Innovating, making key decisions, outcome. Driving your business forward, outcome. All this type of language is extremely outcome-oriented, not product-oriented, despite copy.ai being a product that you can buy. And so when people land on the page, they're actually looking to understand what is the product that you're offering. So what is the purpose of a homepage? Because underlying all of this, if we're going to talk about what makes a good homepage, we have to understand what's the purpose of a homepage. To us, the purpose of a homepage is not to make a Wikipedia entry about your company. Here's everything we do for every possible audience. For us, the purpose of a homepage is to drive a prospect to an action. And that action might be booking a demo, jumping into the product itself, or visiting a subpage to learn more. And really, this kind of depends on your sales model. If you're a product-led company, you probably want them to try the product right then and there. If they land on a product-led growth page, that you probably want to get them in the product as quickly as possible. If you're sales-led, you might want them to book a demo, or if you're very complex product suite, you probably want them to visit a subpage. But this is really what the homepage is supposed to do. It is a marketing asset, not a Wikipedia page. And so some people will use homepages at different stages, right, to tell the brand story. We don't think that this is a good use of a homepage, or to pitch investors. We also don't think this is a good use of a homepage, unless you're so early, like you're, SpaceX or something back in the day, way long before they had customers. Maybe you were just trying to convince investors. But the moment that you have any customers, or you're thinking about getting customers, this gets axed away, and I think this one gets axed away. So the real problem when it comes to homepages is that as your company grows, the messaging clarity on your homepage usually gets worse. Most companies, their clarity degrades as they get larger. So you can see this with some of these examples, right? In 2020, Slack replaces email inside your company. Keep conversations organized in Slack. The smart alternative to email. This is pretty clear. It's pretty clear what Slack is. It's like, oh, we're not going to use email anymore. We're going to use this cool messaging tool. But then as time goes on, it gets less and less clear. Welcome to your new HQ, right? And then eventually great teamwork starts with a digital HQ. All your people, tools, communication in one place, work faster. Again, we've lost the plot of what is this thing. We're not telling anyone what it is. Airtable is another funny example, right? Create your way. Part spreadsheet, part database. Pretty clear. Like I pretty much understand what Airtable is at this point. As it goes on, it gets less clear. One workspace, endless solutions, right? Orchestrate powerful business solutions with a single source of truth. The only limit is your imagination. I don't know what this product is anymore. We aren't actually telling anyone. And then it gets even worse in the last year, right? Connect everything, achieve anything. It's about as vague as you can imagine. So some people, when I talk about this, they're like, well, maybe it's just inevitable that as time goes on, it's just inevitable that messaging is going to get worse. Maybe as you just get more complicated, you get bigger, it's not really going to make sense. And that's just something you have to deal with. But this is actually not the case. There's really large companies, publicly traded companies that have maintained messaging clarity across a variety of industries. So Toast is a great example. Built for restaurants, built for you. 106,000 restaurants like yours trust Toast with their technology. From point of sale to payroll, we take care of it all. So they're effectively saying, who is it for? It's for restaurants. They're giving you some trust building elements, and they're saying the types of products they offer. Point of sale, payroll. They're giving you examples that help you understand what Toast is. And their market cap is 12 billion. So they're very, very large. And then we can even go bigger. MongoDB. This is a dev tools company, loved by developers, built for graph data. And this little part right here is rotating through different use cases of why you would use MongoDB. So despite being a company worth $26 billion, they're still able to maintain clarity. And you could even go bigger than that, right? Datadog, $44 billion market cap. Modern monitoring and security. See inside any stack, any app at scale, anywhere. And you can actually see the product right there. We're actually seeing what the product's going to look like. And then Adobe, right on the really big end of the spectrum, $287 billion company. Make anything you can imagine. Gorgeous images, graphics, art, standout social posts. They're really explaining what Adobe could do. And there's no reason Adobe could have done it in one of those very vague ways, but they didn't. They made it very clear, even despite being giant. So it is a decision that you make as a company to retain the clarity. Over here, does having unclear messaging not matter? That's a big question that we see a lot of times. Well, if you're a very large company, maybe it doesn't even matter what's on your homepage. Who cares, right? These companies are so large. But if you look at a company like Slack, Slack's current homepage says something like this: made for people, built for productivity. It's extremely vague. Connect the right people, find anything you need, automate the rest. But in reality, Slack has stated that their total addressable market is about 1 billion people. 1 billion knowledge workers they think is their total addressable market. Right now, they have 40 million users. So they're getting 4% of their total addressable market. Teams, the biggest competitor, has 28% of the market. And then there's 680 million other people not using Slack or Teams. And so when I put this message in front of them, if I'm Slack, am I helping get the remaining 68% who are maybe not even familiar with Slack? When we think about like the little bubble of Silicon Valley and stuff like that, we're like, well, of course, everyone's heard of Slack. But if you go to any other industry outside of our little tech industry, it's still very relatively unknown. And people hear and say, I don't even know what Slack is. As crazy as that is for us to imagine, we're more in the tech space. So we think that it does very much matter. And a company like Slack would probably do better to just actually explain what the product is if they have any hopes of getting these people. So the question then becomes, how do you position and message on your homepage? What are the actual steps you take to position and message on the homepage? And we have a multi-step process I'm just going to walk you through. This is effectively what we do with all of our different clients. Before we dive in, I want to just talk about the elements in our framework of how we think about messaging. We would call these our messaging elements. So on the market segment, you really have 3 main elements. You have a use case, which is what they're trying to do. And so using the example of PandaDoc, a sample use case might be you're trying to prep contracts for e-signature. And what are you using today? Maybe you're using a competitor product like HelloSign. So we have a use case, current tool, and then we have a problem. What blocks the progress? Well, if I'm using this tool, every time I make a change to a contract, I have to upload a new version, re-add all the fields, which takes forever. And this is actually what we were doing. We had HelloSign, and we were trying to use this, and we were running into this issue. Then we get to talk about our product. And on the product side, here's where we make the pitch. If I'm PandaDoc, I say, you can actually create contracts natively inside of PandaDoc. You don't have to do it somewhere else and upload it. You can do it inside PandaDoc. We have this visual designer that most of these other CLM products don't have. And what does that do? The benefit is you can create and edit the contracts extremely quickly. So we have a capability, a feature, and a benefit. So these 6 elements really underlie all of the messaging work that we do. They help explain how we talk about our value proposition. So the first step in our positioning process is choosing an audience. If you are an early stage company, you will be speaking primarily to visionaries. Visionary people are looking for the next best thing. They want to get their hands on new technology before it's been proven out. And they're ultimately trying to get some sort of competitive edge on the competitors. And so they're willing to take a bet on an unproven, very early stage company with really no customer backing, right? Like I want to get an example of a visionary looks like this. Mercedes getting literal humanoid robots to work on their assembly line. This is very unproven, very new idea. And Mercedes is like, we want to lead the way. We want to be a visionary, forward-thinking company and take a bet on this visionary technology long before any of our competitors are willing to take that same bet. But in reality, most startups that we talk to are trying to reach more of the mainstream market. Maybe they've already gotten a couple of these visionary customers and they're like, all right, we want to scale. Anytime you think about scaling, you're going to be wanting to thinking about the mainstream market because these people are just very hard to find. They're hard to find and hard to come by. And so the rest of the mainstream market, they're not looking to drastically transform their whole company. They're not looking to turn everything upside down and get this competitive edge. They actually are just trying to avoid losing their jobs and they want to keep the lights on. So the way that you speak to the mainstream market is actually the polar opposite. You want to de-emphasize how different your tools are. You want to basically explain that we're not going to change the whole way you do things. We're just going to augment it. We'll come by. We're not going to replace your main systems. We're just going to make them a little bit better with our little tool over here. And the messaging is more about shrinking the product you're trying to sell rather than making it way bigger and harder to adopt, which is increasing the risk. So that's really step one. Are we talking to visionaries or pragmatists? On the second half, what types of companies and what types of departments are we trying to sell into? So this is definitely from a more B2B minded perspective. We work primarily with B2B companies, and B2B companies you sell in usually through a department. And so knowing, am I going to try to make the sales pitch to the customer support team? Am I going to try to make it to the engineers, to the sales team, to the customer success? It's going to drastically change how you make your message. And oftentimes companies will sell in through multiple. They'll have decision makers who care more about different things, but ultimately you're looking for that one champion department that will be so excited about what you've built that they're willing to build the bridges to all the other departments. And so choosing that entry point becomes critical for early stage companies. And software companies, like if you're going for different industries, this will also change how you're actually talking about it. So choosing specific industries, it's not always a vector that you want to slice the market by, but sometimes it becomes very prevalent and will change how you actually deliver the message. From there, we try to uncover what we would call positioning anchors. So positioning in our definition is really choosing reference points that help explain the value of your product. Because positioning, right, it's related to something else. We're positioning against something else. And so when we see how to position products, there really are three types of reference points. You can position for specific use cases, you can position against specific tools, or you can position on desired outcomes. So oftentimes we find use cases are the best for early stage companies. And so if you can say, we've created a product for pipeline management, and your customers understand that use case, you've given them a ton of helpful information to understand likely what your product is going to do, the types of things they can expect to find, and they'll have frames of references to understand the value that you're going to provide. But sometimes it's less of a single use case and more of a tool. Say you've built a modern day CRM that's different than Salesforce and HubSpot. Maybe it's a CRM specifically for one of these industries, right? We made a CRM for universities, and this is why we're better. Effectively, you can choose to position against a specific tool. And then sometimes when you're creating a new category, like Mahesh said at the beginning, you might not have a reference point for a use case or a tool. You might be doing something so drastically different that none of these are realistic options. And so in that case, you actually have to position on a desired outcome. And you would say, yeah, you've tried lots of different use cases to increase your conversions. You've tried lots of different tools, but we're the only ones that can give it to you. And we're actually going to give you a new use case and a new type of tool in your tool belt. And that really is the category creation angle. So from there, we try to design the value propositions. And this is our main kind of bread and butter canvas. This is what we've been working on since we started the company. Ultimately, this is how you actualize all the things that we've talked about so far. And the first piece right here, this top row, is effectively the elevator pitch. It's you have a minute with a customer, and you're just trying to get across the main points of what you do. And so as we walk left to right, it's kind of like an end-to-end story. If you're a founder, let's say in a B2B SaaS startup that is raised between seed to Series B, and you're trying to rewrite your homepage, right? That's the use case. Maybe you're using your internal team. That's the current tool. And you're running into this problem. Your team doesn't have a product marketing background. So you don't know the best way to write and structure the page, which results in a very unclear messaging, right? What are the capabilities that we bring? We give you hands-on product marketing guidance on how to rewrite the page. And who are we? We're product marketing consultants. And ultimately, we're going to get you the desired outcome is a page that's clear and resonates with your target customers. So that's like the elevator pitch of our company. But then let's imagine you were in an Uber and you had more than just 30 seconds. You had maybe 5 minutes as you're waiting to get from place to place. That's when you would start to bring in the specific supporting value propositions that explain how you deliver on the top level elevator pitch. So from here, we could explain, well, if you're trying to choose an audience, you're not sure which audience to focus on, we actually help you figure out which segments you should prioritize. Or maybe if you're trying to figure out what do you want to highlight about the product and you're not sure which features to emphasize, which to deprioritize, we'll actually help you figure out which features are most important that should get put on a homepage, right? And maybe you're trying to actually build that wireframe, write the copy of the page, but you're not sure how to translate these key pieces into a web page narrative that makes sense. We're going to help you translate the positioning and key value propositions into a new homepage. So effectively, you can see each of these sub rows is supporting the top level row. And this top level row is sort of summarizing the things below. It's kind of like a user story map, right? This top level box summarizes the things below, summarizes the things below. And so this is really the key piece. And then from here, we take all of these inputs and bring them into a wireframe. So we basically will get these sections. And then when you write the wireframe, what you're trying to do is color code related to the boxes on the left, ultimately so that every single sentence you write is reinforcing the messaging that you landed on as a team. And so the section here can vary depending company to company, but most companies would do well probably to adopt at least the initial structure that we suggest. So the structure looks like this. You have a hero section that really kind of is walking across the end-to-end story in here, the elevator pitch. Then we say, let's move into a problem section. This is where you create the context for what's going on. Why is this even an issue? Why does your product exist in the first place? What are the people dealing with? And from here, you're actually pulling the product, the problems and the current ways into this section. Then we go to what we would call a solution intro section, which is you're repitching the product based on everything that you've said before and showing how you're going to solve these specific problems. And then from here, we say that you should do 3 separate value propositions. These are the 3 main things you would want to highlight. And again, we're pulling in the capabilities, features, and benefits of those 3 sub value propositions that we talked about before. And then really getting you to a key testimonial section here would probably be the most important piece. And then below, you can sort of vary, right? You can bring in sections about other use cases. You can bring in sections about other personas. You can talk about other company types, all sorts of stuff. But really, most early stage companies especially would do well by just adopting this initial strategy because it really is going to be the clearest message that you can get to. So some people, though, might say, well, what do I do if I have multiple products? I have multiple products and multiple personas that I'm going after. How do I position in those instances? And so you kind of keep everything that I just said in your head, but now loosely you want to broaden out and talk about a couple different approaches of how you can do it. So to really, in general, there's 3 ways. You can summarize, you can itemize, and you can prioritize. First way we talk about is you can summarize. And summarizing is effectively saying, how do I explain the value of all my different products and all my different personas and all my different use cases? And you could see very large companies like Palantir do this. AI-powered decisions for operations for every decision. This is a summary of what it means to work with Palantir across all their different offerings. This is a company called Sage, software and services for every business. Whether you're small or medium business, Sage offers an ideal solution. This is very, very summary oriented. This is an example with Airtable. Unlock your unknown with Airtable. Use AI in everyday work, usher in a new world of potential impact. The problem with summarizing is it's not customer-centric. It puts the burden on the visitor to figure out what the heck do you do. And it can often be very undifferentiated, that you'll end up saying the same things as a lot of your competitors. The second approach is that you can itemize. You can basically walk out, here's the different products that I offer. And you could basically just list them. So an example of this is a company like Rippling, Rippling, basically on their homepage, they say explore Rippling by product, and they just list all the products. And so this can be good if you have product market fit with all your different products, because then it's very likely that each of these products will have a specific user base that's looking for them, customer base that wants to use them. But it's actually extremely risky if you're a pre-product market fit customer startup, because at that point, people will be coming for all sorts of different reasons, and they are going to have to navigate their way through your big menu. So again, it works well if you have product market fit with each product, but it puts the burden on the customer and it ends up being very risky. The third approach, you can summarize, you can itemize, or you can prioritize. And this is what we think is the best approach for most companies. It's really leading with what you think is the most valuable thing. It's for your ideal customer profile. And so you can imagine this is kind of a funny example. There's a restaurant in the States, Panda Express, that effectively they're very well known for their orange chicken. And the orange chicken is what gets you in the door. And so Panda Express leads with the orange chicken. If they have a person giving out free samples, they're going to be giving out samples of the free orange chicken. What they don't do is list out every single thing, right? Is what the itemized way would be, would say, here's all of our menu. Because they know if I can get you in the door with the orange chicken, it's likely that you're going to like other stuff that I have to offer. So even the largest companies in the world do this method, right? Microsoft, right now they're prioritizing Copilot. That's the thing that they're pushing as a company. So it's the first thing you see on their homepage, despite having Microsoft Teams and the Surface and the Xbox and Windows and all these different things. They're pushing right now Microsoft Copilot because that's their most important strategic priority. The same thing with Apple, right? Apple right now is pushing the Apple Watch. It's saying that's the product that we're doing the most. They're not trying to say, here's all the Apple products, here's everything we offer. They're not trying to summarize, oh, we do all sorts of amazing hardware and software solutions. They're saying, no, we want to push this because this is a strategic priority of the company. And even with software examples, right? Workday is an old company. They're very legacy, but even they are still pushing specific products because they understand what's the point of a homepage. The homepage is for marketing. It's going to drive product sales. It's going to drive things that really matter to the company. And right now they're pushing their Workday recruiting product because it must be a newer initiative, some strategic value to the company that they're going to do it that way. Monday is the same way, right? Monday is pushing the work management. They really have these three big product buckets: work management, sales CRM, and dev, but they're pushing the work management. So at this point, they're basically saying, we think this is our most important priority, so we're going to lead with it. Uber is another funny example, just trying to show you that this works across a lot of different industries. Uber is basically 4 different heroes. They have riders. That's who they're prioritizing first. Then they have drivers. Then they prioritize businesses. And then they prioritize food orderers. So they're listing the products in order of most important and basically for each of the different ICPs. So pros and cons of prioritizing: it really understands that the homepage is a marketing asset. It aligns with the existence of an ideal customer profile, people who want to purchase a certain product or whatever it is. But sometimes it can be hard because it kind of hurts the egos of executives. It really makes, it can make it difficult. There can be turf wars. People will be fighting what gets to go at the top. I think it should be my thing that I'm owning. But ultimately, if you can align the company around a strategy, this usually is the best approach. So that's basically all I wanted to cover in the main presentation. So happy to jump to Q&A, Mahesh, if you wanted to.
Absolutely, Anthony. Thanks for that. Very insightful. And we have some questions coming your way. First question again is, how frequently do you iterate your narrative if you're an early stage project trying to hit the product market fit? Like, given that, like, say, products in the Gen AI space are like exploding on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
And how often do you go about iterating your messaging? That's one common question I kind of encounter almost on a day-to-day basis.
I would say if you're an early stage company, I would say quarterly.
Okay.
I think quarterly is a good time to test it, because if you've created a product and you're like, we think it might be for these 5 different personas, groups, then dedicating a quarter to try to figure that out, I think will give you enough signal to basically say, hey, can we land 5 more customers for this specific use case in the next quarter? And that will likely take a lot of that time. And obviously, if you have longer sales cycles, it can take even longer, but you should be able to get signal within a quarter. Is this narrative resonating? Because it just takes some time to dial in the sales narrative. It takes some time to update the page. It takes some time to pull together the case studies. to get these meetings with customers, to have the meetings, to have the other meetings with stakeholders. So I think I would say at least every quarter you should be evaluating the sales narrative and the overall just positioning narrative, especially if you're early stage.
Perfect. And just leading into that, what are some of the ways to validate your messaging?
Yeah,
In quarter?
Yeah, I would definitely try to get it everywhere. I would get it on the homepage. I would, if you're running ads, I would put it in the ads. If you're doing content, I would test it in the content. If you're having a sales pitch, sales meetings with people, I would walk through a deck that basically walks through the narrative. And I'm just looking for signals from all those different angles, right? If the whole company is oriented around this narrative, is it working? Are we getting more content comments on the stuff that we're posting? Are the sales calls going easier? People getting the value quicker? When they land on the website, do they stay longer? Do they convert faster? Whatever it might be, right? Like you're basically just looking across all the things that you have at your disposal. And so trying to align it and then kind of looking across each of the parts of your business.
Absolutely. Perfect. And building on top of this question, like say, I mean, there's also a comment which says that you have tried using session recording tools to see what users did after landing on a page from an ad or like any other source. Apart from that, again, like you said, we just put it on every source possible. When do you take a call? Like, what is a good time to run that experiment and take a call on whether it's resonating? Is there some specific KPIs that you look at based on engagement or some North Star, which helps us validate whether I should continue or not?
Yeah, I think the most important one, if you're a sales-led company, it's can I land customers for the same use case?
Okay.
And like there's a guy that we love, his name's Rob Snyder, and he talks about it basically as if I can get multiple customers that I land for the same reason, and if I wrote the case study, could I swap the logos of the companies and all the case studies would be true? Versus when you have 5 different customers that bought you for 5 very different reasons for different features they care about, that's not any signal. I might have 5 customers, but if they're coming from different reasons, they represent 5 different markets. And so you're looking for product market fit, not product markets fit. You want to get one where you can scale and have repeatability. So the ultimate KPI, I would say, for a sales-led company is, am I getting people buying for the same identical reason back to back to back? And am I hearing signals in the calls of they all are having the same problem? They're coming to us for the same reason. And then as it goes to like a product-led company, it's very similar. It's like, are they coming into the onboarding flow? What are they doing in the product? Are they using the features in the same way? And I'm looking for repeatability. And so those are probably the key ones.
Got it. Okay, perfect. I'm just moving on to the next one. Say, what is your advice on using positive sounding messaging versus negative sounding messaging? There is an example which says if negative sounding messaging is you have tried multiple tools, positive sounding is growing, your business is now easy, right? Like say they just want to understand the difference between how do you bring in that connotation with taking a very negative approach, like they talking about the pain point directly versus telling that your product solves for this particular use case.
It kind of comes back to if you're talking to visionaries or pragmatic buyers. If you're talking to visionaries, you're less talking about pain and you're more trying to highlight the potential unlocks that you can get, right? We're going to drastically transform your business. You're going to get this amazing competitive edge. No one is going to be able to keep up with you, right? Like that's the type of stuff that gets visionaries excited. But the rest of the market, they are complacent. They don't want to get out of what they're doing today. And so for them, you really have to lead with the pain. You have to twist the knife, so to speak, to get them actually wanting to make some hard decisions of like, oh, shoot, we should reevaluate this. And like connecting the pain point, ideally that they already are feeling to your solution. And so it really just comes down to which type of audience you're targeting. And so most companies that are trying to speak to the mainstream audience, I would say really lean into the pain. And that's a big place where a lot of companies miss an opportunity. There's basically no pain or problems listed anywhere on the page.
Absolutely. Perfect. I think you nailed it, Anthony. Anthony, again, like say one interesting perspective, again, we are encountering with a lot of clients that we are working with. Today, we are also marketing for a lot of these highly technical products who sell to developers or like say engineers, right? Who probably don't care about, how you weave your story, but look at the value that, you take the audience for a Snowflake or a Databricks. It's primarily used by engineers, like very, very technical people. how do you go about, building it for such an audience, right? I mean, you have these generic categories like CRM, customer support software, which are very easy to understand as a product, but not those technical or cyber. Take for example a cyber security product, which is probably not used by a very niche audience.
Yeah, I think when you're speaking to those types of groups, I think you try to write for the audience, right? So you use the language that they understand.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be afraid to use some like deeper industry terms, because if that's who you're trying to get to convert on the page, then you want to speak the language that they will really get. So some people think that you should try to make it easy for anyone to understand, but that's not the point. The point is to make it easier for the customer and the audience that you've chosen to understand.
Got it. Okay. The next one is, if I'm starting off with multiple products, I'm starting off as a multi-product company, and there is some traction for some specific modules of the product or some specific products within the larger umbrella brand. Should PMF revenue be primary decider for the hero product, or do you try to build a brand story from the get-go?
I would say, product market fit should be the decider, and I would really lean into trying to find it for my key product. I wouldn't be trying to do the larger brand story. I think the brand story comes naturally from getting product market fit with multiple different products, right? Like that will build the foundation. People try to like flip it. And I think for B2C companies that can really work, right? If you're Liquid Death, they basically put water in these really crazy looking cans. It looks like you're drinking beer, but you're actually just drinking water. Their whole differentiation was this brand story about like, all different pieces that they wove into the story. But I think B2B companies, it doesn't really work that way. It's much more functional. It's much more like, hey, we have this big problem in our business and we're looking for a solution that can solve it. And then really just meeting them where they're at and saying, hey, we could solve that problem for you for X amount of money a month. And they're like, wow, this is amazing. That's sort of like more how I've seen that the product market fit path happens for B2B companies.
Got it. Again, like just leading on from the question, how do you think about building adjacencies? Because see, for some products or for some ecosystem, your TAM is also restrictive, right? Like say, if you think you've exhausted your TAM, or if you're kind of saturated on your overall TAM, and you're probably growing at, like say 10%, 15% year on year, and you want to build your adjacencies, what are some of the factors that you consider while building your adjacencies?
Yeah, so I think I understand your question. To me, we basically want to expand from a point of growth. So if you have artificially shrunk your TAM to a market that you can dominate, and let's say you made it small, it's small enough it's large enough to matter, but it's small enough that you could actually become the market leader. You could get 30, 40% domination. You'll be able to then expand broader way easier than if you just jump to the broad one. Like if Amazon had started, we're going to sell everything possible from day one, they would never have got off the ground. They had to prove out the model with just selling books. And they did books for years. And it was only selling books online and people thought that their biggest competitor was Barnes and Noble. And now it's hilarious to put Amazon in the same bucket as Barnes and Noble. Barnes and Noble is like this tiny little fish. At one point, they were the big fish in the small pond, which was online book sales. So Amazon, Jeff Bezos, they understood we got to dominate the small one, and then we're going to expand from a point of strength. And the same thing, Spotify started with just music, and they waited until they were the market leader before they added podcasts. And now they actually are the market leader in podcasts also, and they waited till then, and now they're expanding to audiobooks. So they're layering on expansion as they've dominated the previous market. And so that's usually a good rule of thumb for companies. It's like if you want to be $1 billion company, you probably got to own the $50 million market first. Then you probably got to own the $500 million, and then eventually you can own the $1 billion market. But you're not going to go from 0 to $1 billion overnight.
Cool, super. I think very insightful, Anthony. Again, we come to the end of the Q&A. I think we've exhausted all the questions. It was a wonderful conversation. Again, thanks a lot for doing this with us. And we'll be sharing the presentation and the recording with the audience. Hope to have you in a future show sometime later, Anthony.
Definitely. Thanks so much for having me. Good to meet everybody, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Again.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.